Friends, in this video, we will learn about Laffer Curve, which is an important curve in economics. So, let's first get the basics of Laffer Curve. Laffer Curve is basically, it shows relationship between tax rate and tax revenue. And if you see, this is one typical Laffer Curve, the one shown by green here. So, as you can see, the shape of this Laffer Curve is basically inverted U shape, right? And what is the hypothesis behind Laffer Curve? It says that at lower as well as higher tax rate, tax revenue will be low, right? But at one optimal tax rate, tax revenue will be high. So this is the hypothesis, or this is what Laffer Curve conveys, right? Now let's understand this in a more detailed manner. So this is the Laffer Curve. As you can see here, when tax rate is 0, so you can imagine that tax revenue will be 0, right? Because when tax rate is 0, that means government is not levying any tax, right? So of course the tax revenue has to be 0 in that case. Now from 0, that is from this point, when we move upward, okay, so let's say we pick this point, right? So what happens that for this point, if I join this by horizontal line and vertical line, right? So this means that for this point on the graph, the corresponding tax rate is this one and corresponding tax revenue is this much, right? Now let's pick another point on the curve and similarly join it by horizontal line and vertical line. So for this point on the curve, the tax rate is this much and corresponding tax revenue is this much. So as you can see, if we move from this point to this point, that is if we move in this direction on the curve, what is happening that tax rate is increasing from here to here, and simultaneously tax revenue is also increasing from here to here, right? So from 0, initially from tax rate equal to 0, when we increase tax rate, the corresponding result is tax revenue is also increasing, right? So this behavior will continue up to this point, right? But what happens in this part of graph? So let's pick another 2 points here. Let's say we pick this point and this point, right? And corresponding to this point, we find tax rate and tax revenue, right? So corresponding to this point, this is the tax rate and this is tax revenue. And similarly, we join this point. So corresponding to this point, this is the tax rate and this is tax revenue, right? So as you can see, if we move from this point to this point, the tax rate is increasing, right? But the corresponding tax revenue is actually decreasing. So it decreased from here to here, right? So after a point, when tax rate is increasing, tax revenue is decreasing, right? So this is exactly what Laffer Curve says, right? And what is this point? This point is basically this one, as you can see, and this is basically what is called optimal tax rate at which tax revenue will be maximum. So if I say it again, basically at tax rate 0, tax revenue will be 0. Then as we increase the tax rate, that is in this part of graph, the tax revenue will increase and there will be one optimal tax rate at which the tax revenue will be maximum. But if we increase tax rate thereafter, that is from that optimal tax rate, then as we increase the tax rate, tax revenue will come down actually, right? So this is what Laffer Curve actually says, right? Now let's understand the rationale behind this behavior of between this relationship between tax rate and tax revenue. So this is the Laffer Curve shown here, right? So what is happening that we saw that at low tax rate, tax revenue is low, right? And this is basically obvious, right? Because when the tax rate itself is low, let's say tax rate is just 1%, right? So tax rate itself is low. So even if all the people, 100% people pay the taxes, but the tax rate itself is very low, just 1%. So obviously the total tax revenue collected will be low, right? Because tax rate itself is low, right? But what happens that when we increase tax rate beyond a point, right? So after crossing this point, this will continue. So from here, if we keep on increasing the tax rate, right? So total revenue will be increasing, right? Because the tax rate has not increased. So basically revenue will be total number of people who are paying the tax into rate, right? So since this rate is increasing, total revenue will increase, right? But beyond a point, what happens that if we increase the tax rate beyond a point, what will happen that tax burden, that means taxes to be paid by individuals and businesses, will become very high actually, right? So let's say tax rate is increased to 40%, right? Now people have to pay 40% of their total income as taxes, right? So tax burden has increased to very high level, right? So this means their net income will actually reduce, right? Because net income is actually total income, whatever they earn minus taxes, right? But this taxes has become very high now, so this net income will be very low, right? So this means that this will actually change the behavior of individuals and businesses. What will happen that either they will get demotivated, right? Their motivation will be low to work and earn more, right? To work and earn more, because they know that tax rate is very high. So even if we work harder and earn more, our net saving will be very low, right? So they will be demotivated to work, right? Or what may happen that people and businesses may basically employ the techniques of tax evasion, that they might start applying the techniques to evade the taxes, right? So in either case actually tax revenue will be hit. So tax revenue will become low, right? Because either people are not working, right, and or they are applying techniques of tax evasion, right? So in any case tax revenue will come down, right? So basically there is just one point, this is revenue maximizing point, which strikes the balance between basically this part and this part is being separated by this revenue maximizing point. So this is one tax rate, right, for a particular economy, which is actually striking a balance between revenue collection and behaviors which are actually leading to low revenue, right? So there is just one optimal tax rate which is striking a balance between these two ends, right? So this is what exactly Laffer Curve says. Now if you basically the learning from this Laffer Curve hypothesis and rationale is that you sometimes hear the news that government is basically giving tax incentives, right? So tax incentive means reducing the tax rate, right? So by reducing the tax rate, when tax rate is very high, already high, let's say it is 30%, and government is actually reducing the tax rate, so that means basically government is trying to pull the tax revenue in this zone, right? So this is the economic rationale behind giving the tax rate incentive, so as to maximize the tax revenue, right? So this is one associated concept of tax incentive. So this is pretty much it about Laffer curve. In the next video we will learn about a new curve which is very important in economics. So stay tuned friends, see you in the next video. Thank you.